Harry's Wife, The Fury Against Harry, Part 2. To enable you to understand more about what Harry will be experiencing behind the scenes at Monty's Shit Show, I'm providing you with this detail and utilising other case examples to drive home what it is he's experiencing. Harry is in a sustained devaluation, which means most of the time he's painted black. In essence, Harry's wife is tired of him. The fuel that he once provided copiously, and it was shiny and interesting and fresh, has become stale. Furthermore, the residual benefits that he once provided are less fulsome these days. The consequence of that was that everything that was wonderful and shiny and new about him, because it was seen by her through her narcissistic lens, painting him white, is now painted black. What she once rejoiced in, she now criticises. What she found interesting, she now finds boring. This is often extremely perplexing for victims. They cannot understand what has caused this sudden shift, and invariably put it down to something else. Often their own behaviour, thinking they have done something wrong, causing them to pore over their conduct in minute detail, seizing upon the slightest thing that they've done to believe that that's what's caused this shift. Or they believe it's other factors. The individual's tired, they're having problems at work, they're having difficulties with their family. Nobody realises that they're dealing with a narcissist the first time around, and even if they do start to suspect what they're dealing with, they have such cognitive dissonance that they cannot square the sudden shift from somebody that adored them to somebody who now behaves with hatred towards them. They cannot believe that someone can alter in such a way. But we, as narcissists, can. We're only kind to you because we see you as providing us with what we require, thus you're painted white. We tire of that in due course when you're the intimate partner primary source, and in essence we see you as having let us down. Therefore, you then become painted black, and that's when the devaluation occurs. For the intimate partner primary source, where you're dealing with a lesser, the devaluation can happen anywhere and in front of other people. But where you're dealing with a mid-range narcissist in the way that Harry is, then his devaluation will be away from the public eye. Yes, occasionally there might be a withering look or a sudden comment that's made that's quickly hidden up as the narcissism reasserts the facade. Sometimes the facade doesn't always remain intact. But it's behind closed doors where the bulk of the devaluation occurs. We have not been provided with any footage, but it will exist of her behaviours towards Harry. And therefore, I'm using examples from other instances to help you understand that dynamic and also to realise this will be what Harry's dealing with right now. I'm going to show you some more footage which involves Alan Kasanoff and the way that he behaves towards his wife and also his children. It is likely that Harry's wife will be behaving in a similar fashion as a consequence of the devaluing behaviours. Not only directly towards Harry, but also towards the children, because that's also a means of, by getting at them, she gets at him. Here's another piece of footage, which I will analyse thereafter.
Your business. Get over there.
Allie, let me in. Get out, Charlie. Go, Charlie and JoJo.
What is wrong with you? You're not involved in this.
I don't care. She's my sister.
Oh my God, you guys are just mentally deranged people.
Allie, can we jump on your bed? That's my shirt.
Yeah, I know.
Allie, can we jump on your bed? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Come on, play violin. No, don't.
You know what? I'm gonna play this game. I'm calling Allianz Francaise and saying you're not listening, and that's why you're not going.
Really? I will call and I will make sure they know the truth. Down. I have
I'm
videos,
gonna annoy him.
and I'll send it to them.
Charlie, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry I yelled at you.
Face.
I'm sorry.
Charlie, listen. Charlie, he's offering you an apology. Charlie.
You guys mind your own business?
She's our sister.
Stop it!
She's our sister. Allie, can I keep this?
So silly. Next time you have a problem with your cabinet, your bookcase, speak to someone else.
It's not about loyalty. It's
Next time
about.
you want to move your bed, speak to
Oh.
someone else.
I
So
don't care.
you're threatening her for standing up for her sister?
Sister.
You're threatening her?
What did she do?
Why don't you call her in here?
Get out of the room.
Give me my phone!
Enough with your goddamn...
Once again, you will note that this has been filmed by the mother in the house. Accordingly, the participants are intimate partner primary source, 3 non-intimate secondary sources, the children. There is no need for Kasanoff to operate a facade as narcissist because there are no members of the public observing. There's no members of his law firm there. There's no neighbours observing. And therefore his narcissism, in effect, switches off the facade button. What that means is that his ignited fury is given full rein to be vented. At the outset of the video, you'll notice that he walks right past his wife while she's filming him, but he doesn't react. Ordinarily, a narcissist would react to being filmed because it's an immediate threat to control and will either challenge the person by saying, "What do you think you're playing at, filming me?" or attempt to grab the phone out of the filmer's hands. Here, he doesn't. Why? Quite simply, at this point, he's been blinkered. He's focused upon nullifying a threat to control that's evidently been posed by one or more of his daughters. He pushes open the bedroom door and immediately turns by shouting, "Shut up, Ali," and there is a shriek of fear from the child. He receives negative fuel as a consequence of the berating that he issues. He then starts berating the child, showing no emotional empathy for that individual. One of the daughters, named Charlie, gets sent out and immediately turns on another daughter, yelling, "What is wrong with you? You're not involved in this." His fury has ignited. There's no talking in a calm or rational manner to his children. His daughter is evidently used to this behaviour, and you will notice that rather than get upset, she responds defiantly, "She's my sister." That is more challenge fuel. He doesn't go so far as to strike his child, although some narcissists would. Instead, he's exasperated, and in effect then doles out a pity play as he puts his hands to his head and then walks to the window as if to say, "I can't deal with this. I can't handle this behaviour." His narcissism would be expecting the intimate partner primary source to become involved at this juncture and offer some soothing words, perhaps chastising the children to show support for him, and then offering a pat on the back or a hug to say, "Look, don't worry, I'll deal with them." One can well imagine that Harry's wife would behave in a similar fashion, that where the children might be playing up through sinful child exuberance, she will round on them, berating them. Harry, who does have emotional empathy for his children, will likely be alarmed by the way that she is speaking to them, with the consequence that this causes him to try and intervene. That, of course, would be a mistake, as if he were to intervene on behalf of the children, chastising her for the way that she's talking to them, she will round on him because he's challenged her. Alternatively, there's a good chance with Harry's wife, slightly different from the response of Kasanoff, that although Kasanoff engages in a pity play, Harry's wife may do so similar, but more dramatic. Think about the number of times she claims to have dropped to the floor sobbing. One can well imagine that she would engage in something similar levels of melodrama in front of Harry in order to draw sympathy from him as to, "I just can't cope with these children. Look at the way that they are behaving." Harry will undoubtedly be perplexed. The children probably won't be playing up, or they're just being children. He'll try and explain to her. And of course, it's likely then she will round on him saying, "You don't understand, you're never here," triangulating him with his absence. For instance, if he pops off to the San Vicente bungalows, it'll be thrown in his face. Returning to the footage, after a moment's consideration, Kasanoff moves away from the pity play because it didn't work, nobody supported him, and therefore his narcissism then selects threat. He states, "I'm going to play this game. I'm calling," and I'm not quite sure who it is that he's calling, and say, "You're not listening." It's an issuing of a threat. At this point, his wife intervenes saying, "Really? I'll call them. I'll make sure they know the truth. I have videos." At this juncture, that appears to be another threat to control, with her issuing the possibility that she will intervene, and then this causes another shift in his narcissism. He began with naked fury, shouting and being argumentative. He then moved to the issuing of a pity play. He then moves to false contrition by saying, I'm sorry I yelled at you." Of course, since he's a narcissist, he cannot be sorry. However, the mother, looking to placate as often the intimate partner primary source does, explains, "Charlie, listen, he's offering an apology." However, showing that this contrition is entirely false, he immediately turns on the other child, saying, "Mind your own business, stop it," shouting at her. He then starts to issue some kind of threat, which sounds like he's saying, "Next time you're wanting to move your bed, speak to her." The response of the mother, as he then exits the room, whereby he is asserting control by withdrawing himself from the non-intimate secondary sources, demonstrating a failure of his ability to parent them and his narcissism that causes him basically to flounce away. The mother questions this behaviour, saying, "You're threatening her for standing up for her sister?" Of course, this is more challenge fuel. He ignores the intimate partner primary source and heads off into another room, thus asserting control over both his wife and daughters through withdrawal. However, the intimate partner primary source wife hasn't given up, and she follows him to the bedroom. He says, "Get out of the room," and starts throwing things towards her in an attempt to force her out and thus assert control over her. At this point, he's had enough of the filming. His focus has moved away from the daughters, thus when he ignored the filming, to focusing on his wife, who is posing the most immediate threat, and therefore, as the footage ends, he says, "Enough with your goddamn filming," and attempts to grapple the phone out of her hands. It's questionable whether Harry would be engaging in the filming of Harry's wife's behaviour. Although we know in the car chase that wasn't in New York, he did get out his phone to film the paparazzi, I would question whether Harry would go so far as to do that within the house. Mainly because if he started to do it, and he might have tried, that will of course be an immediate threat to control, and Harry's wife will respond by trying to pull the phone from his hands, possibly grabbing it and smashing it, attacking him in some form. And I suspect that he will have learned that it's not a very good idea to obviously film her. The filming of a narcissist, of course, is a threat to control, because the suggestion is that the narcissist is doing something they ought not to be doing, resulting in this filming taking place. And therefore, it would only be instances where Harry's able to film Harry's wife covertly, either through the use of cameras hidden in the house, or when her focus is on the children and he films her, that he's likely to be able to get any footage. I think he'll find it much harder to actually obtain footage of her. The other way round, it's likely that Doria has footage of Harry spliffed out of his brains or losing his temper as a consequence of the behaviours that are being meted out towards him. But this kind of behind-the-scenes fracas of arguing with the children, remonstrating with them, marching off, similar behaviours will be meted out by Harry's wife towards Harry and the children, and therefore this video in relation to the Kasanoffs is equally applicable to Harry's wife. She's probably going to be slightly less aggressive towards the children by virtue of her mid-range status compared to Kasanoff, but she will dole out the pity plays, she will utilise threat, and she will withdraw flouncing and perhaps theatrically crying, claiming she can't cope with this any longer, thus in an attempt to elicit sympathy and support from Harry. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.